The tracking of how the surveillance grid is actually monitoring and tracking and actually turning people's lives into TV shows. This is actually happening all over the UK. It's a massive, it's actually worldwide right now. So those are the shows that I mentioned before. Thank you.
Question to the panel. How can the international jurists help to support Ms. Seven's plight? Is there anything that you can do, any support system available to assist her, considering that she's been through all the different areas of laws or law providers that should be able to support her? What can the jurists do in this instance?
I think this is a good question, and I think this you would need to probably address to the right person, and that's Dr. Adish Agarwala, who would be, I think, in the best position to respond to that, because this is an issue which is something that commands a lot of attention, and attention at the topmost level. So I think he would be probably the best person to be able to respond, and even perhaps make a statement from his position where he's at. So I think that would probably be the best option.
Okay, finally, how could one institute an inquiry into the events that's happened to this young lady? What would be the process?
Inquiry in what sense?
Like a public inquiry?
I mean, a public inquiry, I'm sure, I mean, there are various non-governmental organizations that will come out with a public inquiry and can support this with their investigation, with their reports. But I think to come up with an inquiry which commands some level of attention from the state would I think to convince some investigative agencies of the state to look into this would be a bit challenging, I feel personally.
Why?
Why so?
But because the state, no, I think the state would probably have its own infrastructure in place, and there's a process which one has to go through. I mean, you can obviously approach the state, and I'm sure they will have some mechanism in place. They may have some framework in place.
Just to say, there have been few inquiries that's taken place over the years. We've seen them televised. We know that they exist. The thing is, what I'm trying to ascertain is how would members of the public wishing to support somebody who's been unjustly treated, what is that process? How do we do it? And I mean, sorry, you're from the Bar Association, so you should have that knowledge to share with us.
No, exactly.
You see?
I mean, I'm not from the International Council of Jurists, but for me, like for example, if I was in India, then there is this concept of public interest litigation, which you can actually approach the court.
Yes.
You can approach the High Court under Article 226 of the Constitution of India. You can approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution of India. Similarly in Canada, similarly in Australia.
Not in the UK.
But in the UK, the concept of public interest litigation, I'm not too clear. I don't think so. We probably, I don't think that exists.
What about the international forum?
Sorry. Is India a part of the British Commonwealth?
India is a part of the Commonwealth.
Right, so that means that the same law that applies in India applies here.
No. The laws.
Necessarily?
No.
Okay, well, I'm still learning. I'm just navigating my way through. You know what I mean? So
The law is more out of reach in England. It's more out of reach
it's more out of reach.
of the ordinary person. If you go to India and Pakistan, the law is within reach. They can issue this thing called suo motu. If there is an incident and nobody's investigating, a judge can issue a notice and say this must be investigated. But in England, that can't be done. They're more proactive.
Can't be done or won't be done.
Well, at the moment, I'm talking facts. This is not a judgmental thing. I'm talking about what is factually possible. It is factually possible in India and Pakistan for a judge to be proactive and to order an inquiry.
Yes.
But it is not possible in England. There is nothing that gives a judge
But
that.
from an international level, I mean, when you're talking about 7/7, for instance, it affects the whole public. So the international community can actually go, because obviously it's part of the United Nations, and we're talking about as far as Geneva Convention on Human Rights. The public have the right to be protected, the people that were murdered have the right, their families have the right. So we're talking about, from an international perspective, the international community, in fact, has a role to play. That's why I'm here today. That's why I was invited here today.
Right. I'm not actually commenting on any of that. I'm just talking about what it's possible for English judges to do and not to. That's
what
all.
do you mean by that their hands are tied?
Well,
No,
the
law,
legislation,
basically
the
the
law
legislation is
sets out.
such that, you know, you need
They're
to...
not. They can't be proactive in this country. They have to be independent.
Yeah, but they have as far as law is concerned, they have to honour the rule of law. And so when rule of law is breached, I mean, you've got all sorts of terrorism acts, you've got thefts acts, you've got copyright acts. All of those laws are something the judges
It's
can
for
actually...
the executive, it's not for the judges. You see, there's a real
So we have a
distinction.
Sorry, we have someone who's quite...
Thank you.
I just wanted to make an observation in response to the question, what can the law do? And I really wanted to sort of ask you about things that you very obviously tried to do.
Okay.
And my thought is this, that I can't say always, but typically in a sound legal system, a powerful story of injustice will resonate. So let's just fasten on one of the many examples you gave, which is strictly contractual.
Yes.
I mean, the story you told is an extraordinary story.
It's true.
I don't mean extraordinary in a negative sense. I mean, it's a truly extraordinary story.
It is.
And yet, I'm unfamiliar with it. This is news to me.
Well, the
today.
report has been published
well,
since 2013.
Well, let me ask you, what, you know, in brief terms, what is the story? What happened with Strictly Come Dancing?
Well,
I mean, are you claiming, I thought that up, I communicated it to third parties,
well,
and they filched it from me?
well,
Is
basically, yes, in principle, I actually created, my brother died, just quickly summarising, my brother died in the early 90s, and he was a genius, and I decided I would create something about health. He died of health-related issues. And I come from the dance and film and music industries. So as a tribute to him, I put together a multimedia package which encompassed dance and fitness and whatever. And I was referred to Russell's Law's firm, and when Christopher Gossage actually saw my documents, he couldn't believe what I'd created. I got him to sign confidentiality. And he tipped off the networks and told them that they found the golden goose, basically. And from that point onwards, even though I had copyrights beforehand, and I also had trademarks because I was with the patent office and trademark office. So because of the fact that they knew I had evidence, they'd signed contracts, I also had a paper trail for the negotiations because his reaction was such excitement that it made me feel I better get some recording information here in case he sort of nicks it from me. And I recorded it by email, all the negotiations, it's all part of the case. There were 14 witnesses that testified, produced evidence. It's the Judge Humphrey, if you go to the website, there's an actual audio of the courtroom hearing. And he said it was the best case that he'd ever seen in his whole career as a judge. And I mean, he said that to me. He was astounded by the level because it's a massive case. I sued 10 corporations and I won. Consequently, the barrister, they hired an organised crime type of gangster barrister, a young guy in his early 30s, maybe 20s. He's much younger than myself. And basically, he perverted justice by changing all the judgments. He basically, in the document, in fact, there's actually, if you go onto this website, you'll see a copy, a handwritten copy of where he changed court orders and judgments in his own hands. And so that's in summary, but if you go onto the farrellreport.net, it will give you, it will give you an overview of the enormity of this case and the scale of it. Really, there should be an immediate ramifications and public inquiry, but what they do is that they hire people to try to discredit you. But thank you.
I think we'll end the session now. Thank you very much
Thank you very much.
everyone, and I think we are all set for the next session.